Deep within the Gilău Mountains, Lake Tarnitza sits like a dark, jagged mirror wedged between steep forested slopes. On the surface, it is a place of serene beauty, popular for boating and retreats. But beneath the glittering waves lies a massive, artificial abyss created by a concrete dam that stands over 90 meters tall. The water here is not like the water of a river. It is heavy, pressurized, and perpetually cold. As the sun disappears behind the ridges, the lake takes on a sinister hue, turning from deep blue to a light-absorbing black. For decades, locals have whispered that the lake has a memory, and that it does not take kindly to those who try to disturb its depths. This isn't just a lake, it's a drowned world of secrets. Welcome to Well of Monsters. The sheer scale of the engineering feat that created Lake Tarnitza also created a world that humans were never meant to see. When the valley was flooded to build the dam, it swallowed history. Entire groves of trees, mountain paths, and the foundations of old homesteads were plunged into an eternal, icy darkness. As you descend, the light from the surface fades within seconds, replaced by a murky twilight that eventually gives way to a total, oppressive black. The pressure at the bottom is enough to crush reinforced structures. For a human diver, it feels like the weight of the entire mountain is pressing against their chest. The water is so still and the darkness so thick that senses begin to fail. You lose track of up and down, left and right. In this void, the only thing you can hear is the rhythmic, mechanical hiss of your own breathing, a sound that becomes terrifyingly loud when you realize how alone you truly are in the abyss. The dam itself is a masterpiece of concrete and steel, holding back billions of liters of water. To maintain such a colossus, professional divers are periodically sent down into the darkness to inspect the valves, the grates, and the structural integrity of the underwater wall. These are not recreational swimmers, they are elite technicians equipped with heavy suits and umbilical lines. However, even the most seasoned divers speak of the dam with a specific kind of dread. They describe the experience of descending along the smooth, cold face of the concrete as feeling like being watched by a giant. In the murky depths, where visibility drops to near zero, the dam becomes a vertical labyrinth of pipes and shadows. It is here, in the shadow of the Sentinel, that the first reports of the horror began to emerge, stories of divers who went down to do a routine job and came back changed, or didn't come back at all. One of the most famous legends of Lake Tarnitza concerns a senior diver tasked with a deep water repair decades ago. He was a veteran, a man who had worked in the harshest conditions. He descended into the darkness with a powerful halogen lamp, his breathing steady over the radio. But as he reached the 40-meter mark, his heartbeat began to spike. Suddenly, he began to scream, not a scream of pain but of pure, existential terror. He demanded to be pulled up immediately, disregarding decompression protocols. When he finally broke the surface and they removed his helmet, his colleagues were horrified. He refused to look at the water, shaking uncontrollably. He never spoke a word about what he saw in the silt, but he never touched a drop of water again, moving away to escape the memory of the lake. What could cause such a reaction in a professional? The most persistent theory involves the monsters of the deep. Legend says that when the valley was flooded, the massive fish that lived in the river were trapped in the new lake. With no natural predators and a vast, deep territory, they supposedly grew to monstrous proportions. Local fishermen tell stories of seeing shadows as long as train cars moving beneath their boats. Divers have reported seeing eyes the size of dinner plates reflecting their lamps in the silt. These are apex predators that have adapted to the lightless world at the bottom of the lake. They are the kings of the drowned valley, and they do not tolerate intruders in their murky kingdom. To a diver alone in the dark, a collision with such a creature is an encounter with a prehistoric nightmare. Before the dam was closed, the valley was home to small settlements. When the water rose, not everything was cleared. Today, these structures exist in a state of suspended decay, covered in layers of fine silt and algae. Divers who have strayed from the dam report finding themselves drifting through a ghostly, underwater forest. In the dim light, the branches look like reaching skeletal arms. Some claim to have seen the flickering lights of a village that no longer exists, or to have heard the muffled tolling of a church bell coming from the deepest part of the lake. The memory of the valley is preserved in the cold, dark water, and those who dive too deep often find themselves caught in the psychic echoes of a world that was drowned. The lake is a tomb, and sometimes the tomb speaks back. There are official records of accidents, but there are also the unrecorded vanishings. Over the years, several divers, both professional and adventurous amateurs, have simply disappeared while exploring the depths near the dam. In many cases, their safety lines were found severed, but not by a sharp edge or a mechanical failure. The lines looked as if they had been snapped by a sudden, immense force, or chewed through by something with massive strength. Search and rescue teams often find nothing. The bottom of Lake Tarnitza is a graveyard of silt. Any body that sinks to the bottom is quickly covered by layers of sediment. The lack of closure has fueled the belief that the lake doesn't just drown people, it claims them. They become part of the silence, forever patrolling the cold concrete alongside the shadows. Skeptics often point to nitrogen narcosis as the explanation for the horrors. At great depths, the nitrogen in a diver's breathing gas can have an anesthetic effect, leading to hallucinations, euphoria, or intense paranoia. This rapture of the deep can make a diver see monsters in the shadows or hear voices in the hiss of their regulator. But the veterans of the lake argue that narcosis doesn't explain the physical evidence. It doesn't explain the snapped steel cables, or the massive sonar readings that show objects moving in the deep that are far too large for any known species. Narcosis might explain the fear, but it doesn't explain the predator. The lake uses the narcosis to soften the mind before the cold takes the body. It invites you to stay until you can no longer leave. In the past, rumors circulated that the lake was being used as a dumping ground for more than just water. Some suggested that sensitive military equipment or even hazardous waste had been consigned to the deepest parts of the abyss, where no one would ever find it. This would explain the heavy security that once surrounded certain areas of the dam. If something toxic was leaked into the water, it could explain the mutations of the local fauna, the monsters that the divers reported. It adds a layer of human-made horror to the natural mystery. The lake is a perfect place to hide a secret. The pressure is so high and the darkness so thick that once something reaches the bottom, it is essentially in another world. The divers who saw too much might have been frightened by the cold remains of greed hidden where no light reaches. One of the most unsettling sounds occurs when the dam's overflow valves are opened. The roar of the water is deafening, but beneath the thunder, locals claim to hear a high-pitched, metallic screaming. They say it sounds like thousands of voices crying out from the pipes. Technicians say it's just cavitation and water pressure, but the legend persists that the sound is the collective agony of those the lake has claimed. On stormy nights, when the wind howls through the gorge and the valves are wide open, the lake seems to be singing its dark history to the mountains. It is a sound that keeps people away from the shore, a reminder that the energy generated by the dam is bought with a price. The screaming isn't in the pipes, it's in the water itself. In recent years, tech-savvy explorers equipped with high-definition sonar have attempted to map the bottom of the lake. The results have been tantalizingly vague. Sonar sweeps have picked up anomalous masses near the base of the dam that don't match the geometry of the structure or the natural rock. When cameras are lowered into these areas, they often experience sudden technical failure. The feeds go to static, or the lenses become clouded by an inexplicable surge of silt just as they are about to reveal something significant. It is as if the lake itself is actively resisting observation, guarding its secrets from the digital age with the same ferocity it used against the divers of the past. Some things are not meant to be recorded, they are only meant to be feared. Why do we fear this place? The divers who descend into its depths are like astronauts stepping onto a hostile planet. The horror they experience is the realization of their own insignificance in the face of the massive, cold weight of the water. The lake doesn't need to be haunted by ghosts or inhabited by monsters to be terrifying. Its mere existence, a man-made void filled with darkness, is enough to trigger our deepest primal fears. The stories of the divers who never returned are the modern myths we create to explain the inexplicable dread we feel when we look into the black water and realize that something might be looking back, waiting for its next visitor. Today, Lake Tarnitza remains a paradox of beauty and terror. Boats still glide across its surface, and the dam continues to hum with the production of power. But the legends haven't faded. Every few years, a new story emerges, a strange sighting, a diver who refuses to go back down, or a sonar reading that defies logic. The abyss remains patient and cold. It is a reminder that even when we build great structures to harness nature, we are only scratching the surface. The real world, the ancient, dark, and silent world, lies just beneath the waves, waiting for the next person to dive a little too deep. The abyssal silence is not an absence of sound, it is the presence of a secret that we are not yet ready to hear. Subscribe and ring the bell if you want to keep exploring the deep and unexplained corners of our world with me. Take care. And remember, I'll see you at the bottom of the well.